The Truth Girls.
Hi, it's Sonia here. I'm pretty upset this week, actually. I have been so upset that I couldn't even make a video. Well, what I'm upset about is the level to which they have now taken censorship. You're supposed to have freedom of speech in America. I mean, like, I'm Canadian, but whatever. We're pretty close neighbors, let's just say. You're supposed to have freedom of speech according to, I think, your constitution, freedom of the press, right? Supposed to be. But it turns out that the press now is actually in the hands of just a very small number of companies. They've sort of bought up all the media. And of course, these companies have their own political views, their own agenda, their own sponsors who they want to please. So it's really hard to get very different opinions. I mean, if the same people own all the stuff, you go to one news outlet and you get one line, and you go to the other one, you get the same line because they're owned by the same people. Because the best way to really be able to form your own sensible opinions, to really be educated, is to be able to have access to very opposing viewpoints, to be able to look at this, discuss it, analyze it, and then come to a conclusion. I mean, that's ideal. This is what I was taught in university. This is what we did. You know, you have like I guess it's your hypothesis and your antithesis and then your synthesis. I mean, this is what we were taught to do. We were taught to research things, actually, and not just look at one side, but at both, and then say, hey, you know, they say this, they say that. And to tell you the truth, in university, we weren't even supposed to give our own opinions, but I mean, down the road, the goal is, I suppose, to learn how to think. And so this is, you know, what I was taught to do. And so this is what I've been doing. I like to look at two sides of an issue, more sides, and see what I think, and then share it with you and see what you think. But apparently it's not okay to do this anymore. So the media has made it that it's very hard to access like a broad range of viewpoints. And so then we were like, oh, hey, we've got the internet. So you had independent journalists, such as, I guess, myself, who would report on things without being forced to take a particular view because of, you know, our sponsors, which we didn't have, or, you know, our political affiliations, or whatever. Like, you could have very varied information and opinions on the internet. And now the powers that be have decided that this is no good. It's gone too far. Of course, some of the information out there isn't good. But that doesn't mean necessarily that people shouldn't be allowed to hear it. I mean, this is, you know, people could say, oh, well, you know, it's dishonest, people putting out lies and this kind of thing. But what happens if you try to make everything hyper safe is you just really end up restricting freedom of speech for real. Now people are being completely deplatformed. And the argument there is, oh, well, you know, this isn't the media. This isn't anything to do with your freedom of speech, because these are private companies like Facebook or whoever, Pinterest. They're private companies, and you're a user, and they have a right to set the terms of use. So if they don't like what you're doing on there, they have a right to kick you off or shadow ban you or whatever. But of course, that's what people use on the internet. They use all these platforms. So, you know, this is where we're at right now. And I guess the issue is, you know, where do you draw the line? I think most people would agree you draw a line with hate speech, you know, like you don't want that. When it comes to information, though, do we really have to be so draconian? I mean, one thing that I learned when I was in university was how to check your sources. If you see a headline and you actually bother to read the article, which you should before sharing it, you read the article and then you cross-reference it. You know, you Google it and you see, well, who else is talking about this? And if you find out that actually this all traces just to one article and there's no like cross-referencing and there's nothing to really support it, then that kind of cast doubt on its credibility. If on the other hand you look something up and you can cross-reference really well and back it up, then there's more chance that what you're looking at is solid. Do we really have to ban all this stuff because people don't know how to check their sources. Because that's, that's what it's coming down to. And the other thing is, when there's information that goes against what, let's say, the powers that be want you to believe. And like, this is where it really bothers me. Now we're talking about vaccination. Really big issue these days. And, I want to tell you something, and I hope you can listen to the whole thing so you can understand why it bothers me that there's a censorship on it. And I want to say, first of all, that actually I'm not anti-vaccine. Like some people will be labeled as anti-vaxxers. I could not consider myself as someone who's actually anti-vaccine. That said, I can't say that I think it's a good thing for people to not be allowed to have any information other than just information that would just encourage them to go with the flow. You know what I'm saying? Like, that people should not be allowed to know what risks there are, or which vaccines are more beneficial or more necessary or maybe useless in their case. Well, the powers that be would say, well, you should just do what your doctor says. But see, the doctors are under orders from higher up. So like, actually my doctor explained this to me once. The World Health Organization gives orders to Health Canada, they give orders to Health Quebec, Health Quebec gives orders to the clinic, who gives orders to my doctor. And the doctor's not allowed to say anything other than that. Like when I went in for a flu shot, she says, I have to tell you you should get a flu shot. She's technically not allowed to say, well, there's risks and maybe you don't really need it, and here's the vaccine package insert. That's how it really works. So kind of the only way, if you want to know more before you make a decision, is you have to look into it yourself. It's true that there is information out there that isn't good. Now, I got really into researching vaccines a long time ago, and there was a time where I was really like just categorically anti-vaccine. I'm not that way anymore. Actually, it was a case where like the more information I got, at first I started to be like, oh yeah, this is really, really bad. It's all bad. Then as I got more information, I realized, okay, it's not all bad, but there's problems with maybe the way the system is implemented, or with how some people react to it, or there's issues with it, but it's not black and white anymore. You start out no info and you're like, hey, everything's great, and why would you ever refuse a vaccine? Then you're like, okay, I can see why. And then you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. And then you're like, eventually down the road, you're okay, but I see why, we kind of need some of them. I mean, seriously, if you get bitten by a rabid dog, you need a vaccine. There's no way around it. Vaccinating for rabies, like I've looked into it, and it's something people might start taking for granted. But I mean, we have such a safe environment and such a good health system on the whole that we just take things for granted. But rabies vaccine, it's definitely not a bad thing. It saves a lot of lives, And there are other vaccines too, which probably save a lot of lives for some people under certain circumstances. So, but there's got to be something that can be agreed on. Like it can't just be everybody just take all the shots that we tell you all the time and don't question anything. And on the other hand, it's not like vaccines haven't served any purpose either. You know what I'm saying? What we need is solutions. And part of that is being able to have information and discussion. If you just tell everybody, just shut up and do what you're told, especially for Americans who are very freedom loving, who have freedom as a really important part of their constitution, that's not going to go over well. And having the freedom to have that information doesn't mean people are going to make bad decisions. For example, with the vaccination rate, actually, even though there's tons of information that's been around for a very long time, the number of people who refuse vaccines is very low. Most people still would say, okay, I know there's some risk. I mean, people do worry, but they'll say, well, okay, there may be some risk, but the risk is pretty low, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Most people won't refuse, even with the information that's out there. So it bothers me that they're deplatforming everything that has to do with vaccine discussion, because I don't see it having done the kind of harm that they make it out to be. I think, well, man, I can't say anything. I'm gonna get totally deplatformed. Like, I'm already deplatformed on Facebook. So it's like, if you are an independent journalist, but then you talk about what is not maintaining the status quo, then you get deplatformed. It's very, very like iron tight grip. on the media. That really becomes like truly a propaganda machine when you do that. It's like, oh, you know, when I say these words, I think it must sound like I'm exaggerating, but if you think about it, it really isn't. Oh my God. Anyway, I wanted to show you, I have this crazy subversive collection of books. I read all these books. Yeah, I read them. And in the end, you'd be surprised what I concluded. These are all books that are banned now. Banned on Amazon. Well, a lot of them. Okay, here's my very subversive collection. Okay, look, The Thinking Mom's Revolution. Oh my God, I can't. Vaccine Epidemic. What? Oh my God, I have a book about cancer. Knockout from Suzanne Summers. Like, how could you even write this book about what, non-conventional cancer cures? But you know what? She did. And I read it. I don't think it did me any harm. Oh, I have stuff about autism here. Nutritional supplementation, changing the course of autism. Oh, really? Impossible cure. Oh my God, this one's about homeopathy. And then I have this one, healing the symptoms known as autism. I know some people are fans. I don't agree with that one. Natural prescriptions. Oh my God, what? Natural? Burn this book. Recovering autism, ADHD, and special needs? But what? How could I even read this book? Burn it. And then I have this one, the most subversive of all. The Medical Mafia by Madame Guy. That goes in the burning pile. See, I have those books and I did read them. And I read a lot of other things. And after all that, instead of concluding that I was like more anti-vaccine than ever, actually, after reading everything, I concluded that actually, no, I'm not anti-vaccine. But I'm pro-information, I'm pro-informed choice. Autism, after I read all those books and all the supplement stuff, and I did that with my son, and then I found out I was autistic. And I realized, you know what, I am never going to be normal. And that's part of my charm, I guess. That's how it is. And that, like, there's no pill that's going to make me normal. There's no supplement. I'm just never going to be neurotypical, neither is he. So we can work on individual things like focus or calm or sensory stuff, but, you know, he's never going to be neurotypical. And I'm the one who read all the books, right? So it's not like I don't know what I'm talking about. Read all the books, lived it, my son lives it. And I'm convinced that you cannot take an autistic person and make them neurotypical. I'd rather just raise my son so he's well adjusted and not worry so much about, you know, whether he's autistic or not. Anyway, that's it. I've been so upset all week about this business. I couldn't really get past it. I had to make a video. I think it's messed up. But there's some hope in the fact that there are other platforms now like Brighteon and MeWe. The thing is, I'm a bit burnt out with having social media accounts. Like, I have enough to deal with in my life, and having like so many accounts is just like overwhelming at this point. But it definitely seems like there's this monopoly on the media. And now it's extending to all these platforms and even Amazon and all this. It's like this has become like such subversive information that it's just about banned. It's like we're book banning. It's almost like book burning. You know, it seems a bit crazy. Do you really think that these books are such a problem that people are going to read it and they're going to go nuts and they're going to do terrible things and make bad decisions just because they read a book? Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Let me know what you think. Thanks for liking this video. Thanks for your support. Thanks for listening to me. And I'll see you next time.
The truth occurs.